Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:07. It's O'Connor and Company on a busy Wednesday morning, super busy. In fact, let me give you a rundown of what we got ahead of us. 6:35, Cal Thomas, our weekly conversation. 7:05, Steve Malloy of Junk Science about Trump's speech at the UN. 7:35, Thomas Canavan from the Law Enforcement Museum here in town. At 8:05, Susan Crabtree, Real Clear Politics on the conviction of Trump's would-be assassin, Ryan Ruth. And then at 8:35, Luke Rosiak on a blockbuster story out of Maryland where social services in that state put foster children in harm's way. We'll get into all of that coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Cassie Smedley this morning. It's always good to have you, Cassie.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back, Larry.
Good morning, and we're here with Sean Kennedy now with presidents of Virginians for Safe Communities to follow up on a story that we were tracking. This had to do with an illegal immigrant who was apprehended and arrested for sexually assaulting a jogger on a bike path in Fairfax, on a trail, again, this was the result, Sean Kennedy, of Fairfax County being a de facto sanctuary jurisdiction where immigration laws in cooperation with ICE are not followed and does not take place. And now we've had a development in this person's arrest and the subsequent trial. What's the latest?
The latest is that he's been determined to be mentally incompetent, that he's crazy and therefore will not face trial or, honestly, consequences for a stranger rape. And the then Herndon police chief noted when they made this arrest last November, this was the first incident of a stranger rape in Herndon that she was aware of in her 12 years as a police chief there. So this is an extremely rare thing for this to happen, and so violent and horrible that, of course, there should be eyes on this all the time. And the fact that he was illegal is terrible. But there's one fact in this thing that I think we need to focus on as much as that he should have been deported.
Yeah.
He was arrested only months earlier and sentenced for indecent exposure at the same place on the same WMAL trail.
Yeah.
For indecent exposure in front of a woman walking the trail, and was released 4 days before the rape. 4 days.
Thank you for jogging my memory on that. There's that. And also, if I remember right, he had already been accused and apprehended in D.C. and Virginia for assault, for battery, for trespassing, stolen vehicle, weapons violations, drinking and smoking marijuana in public, loitering. And then the latest was the indecent exposure. At no point in all of those run-ins with law enforcement was he, A, determined eligible for deportation, or B, determined to be mentally incompetent. Now suddenly he's mentally incompetent to stand trial. He was competent enough to be released to the public, but he wasn't competent to stand trial.
Exactly. I mean, we're safe to have him on the streets, but we wouldn't want to violate his rights and have him incarcerated. And what's critical here is being deemed incompetent to stand trial doesn't mean what it used to mean. It doesn't mean you go to the loony bin where they put locks on the doors. It means often they put you in outpatient, which means they free you and make you come every week to take your meds, or they check in on you, or you have to go to therapy or whatnot. And that means he could still do what he just did. He proved it in November of last year that when back on the streets, he will commit more violent sex acts.
Gosh, this story crystallizes the worst fears of women, of parents, of communities. When we talk about how illegal immigration has made every town a border town, every border community, but getting to the heart of what you're talking about, it's not just because they've come into our country illegally. It is because we have a system that is not protecting citizens and is allowing this to happen, essentially. And we talk all the time, of course, about we've got an election coming up in 6 weeks, 41 days. And we've got a woman who's calling herself a moderate running for governor, Abigail Spanberger, who has been on the record of saying that she would roll back the immigration policy. She is in favor of making Virginia a sanctuary state. What is the consequence of that? From your perspective, are we talking about this is not just going to be a one-off instance that we're talking about?
Oh, it definitely won't be. I mean, this is the consequence. In effect, we have been a sanctuary state regardless of Glenn Youngkin being governor because Joe Biden was president. The 10 to 15 million illegals crossed the border between when he entered office and when he left office. And who those are, we don't know. They didn't do background checks because of the way it works. How do you check backgrounds in a foreign country that has, a hamster wheel cages for their national criminal background system in Guatemala, Nicaragua, et cetera. So we have no way to verify what they did in those countries. They come here, they commit new crimes, and Joe Biden continued to allow them to stay here. You know how we know this is a consequence of the national sanctuary policy? At one point in 2022, when he was arrested by the police, he asked to be deported. And yet he's still walking our streets. And 2 years later, he rapes a woman in Herndon, Virginia. It's truly insane.
And these are the policies of Steve Descano and his party that continue to be protected and celebrated by the Democrats. And Sean, what's specifically to this suspect, this person who has now been found to be incompetent? This is Humberto, I believe was his name. What's going to happen with him? Has it been announced whether he will be now handed over to ICE, or will the Democrats at Fairfax County have their policy prevail and keep the sanctuary for him?
Well, I mean, that actually is an interesting question, because if he was to remain in law enforcement custody, ICE can't grab him out of a jail to take him, they can't break down the doors, whatever. It's when he goes onto the street. If the mental competency order from the judge is inpatient, he would remain in jail until he's being transferred to a mental health facility. If it were outpatient and he were back on the streets, ICE can execute it. But we know that neither the Fairfax County Sheriff nor almost any other jurisdiction save Loudoun cooperates with ICE on issuing detainers. They don't know when he would be released. Would he be released at 5 p.m. on Friday? Would he be released at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, or whenever they actually walk him out the door? Now, I know that there are good people at the sheriff's office and that they sometimes, let it slip casually when he's going to be released. But that is not a formal notification to ICE. That means ICE has to mill around on the word of somebody else and wait for him to come out, or they have to execute the warrant, on the streets itself, which is dangerous for everybody involved. And this person's a transient, so where he's going isn't clear. It's hard to piece together where homeless illegal immigrants gather. So it's very difficult to know whether or not ICE will be able to get him easily and quickly if he's released on the streets.
And quickly, is that merely the decision of the Fairfax County Police Department, or does the DA's office, Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, Steve Descano, have any say in this as well in terms of the timing and his disposition?
The sheriff decides when he gets released in terms of time of day or whatever, but the judge is going to order either an outpatient or an inpatient transfer. So that hasn't happened yet. They just deemed him mentally incompetent.
Got it. Thank you for that update. And by the way, that sheds light as to why this doesn't happen in Loudoun County, because you've got a good sheriff out there with Mike Chapman who fully cooperates in, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Enforcing the law. That's it. Thank you, Sean Kennedy. Always good to talk with you.
Thank you.